Steadily it rises.
Hey, it's ODB, the Lincoln Addict. I want to do a listing review on this 61 Lincoln Continental convertible that recently went on Bring a Trailer. I've got a new setup here, so hopefully that you guys enjoy this. It'll make it easier for me to do these listing reviews going forward with a new mic. And what I'd like to do now is jump right in. I definitely appreciate, as I always say, the continued support for everyone that comes and watches the channel. Maybe you're looking to buy a Lincoln Continental at some point, or possibly just get more information because it's a topic that you like. Either way, I certainly appreciate you coming by. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to jump into this 1961 Lincoln Continental convertible. This listing ends in 6 days. It is active, of course, and it's currently just north of $20,000. We'll talk about how nice of a car this is. Let's look at a preliminary. We've got the 61 with a very distinctive front end. Many people are fans of this year. It kind of has the look of the Thunderbird. There's lineage that goes back, of course, with the design of the 61 that really was originally going to be the Thunderbird. We basically see the 61 was acquired about 9 years ago in 2015. The person had located it on a popular site at the time, and it had basically been a storage find. I know some folks like myself, you get tired of hearing barn find so much, but certainly this one was in storage, per they say, about 4 decades. They did some repaint on it. They did a refresh. And what I see with this car is Sultan white, which we'll talk about, and just a nice top that was installed. Again, the car was repainted. So just like a quick overview, when you start to kind of look at it, you got this blue carpet, you've got this blue top, and you got a pretty fresh looking engine bay for the most part underneath the car as well. And then we do have some videos and a ton of photos. Now, what I would like to do with these deeper dives is I'm going to go over what I put together that I'll just kind of keep this content kind of moving right along in terms of this review. But in 61, we know there were 2,857 convertibles produced. For those that didn't know, that's the second lowest out of the 61 to 67 series, with, of course, 67 being the lowest production for the convertible. So obviously this was a big change from 1960. And although 2,857 were produced, they're definitely sought after. Now, I did one slide I just realized that I forgot to update was this slide. And what we can go ahead and do here is jump right in, and we'll take a look at it now together. You can see how this works. So if I log into Haggerty, I can type in 1961 Lincoln Continental. I can select it or hit search. It's going to pull up a couple of different ones here. What we're looking for is the sedan, the convertible, 61 four-door convertible, of course. So you can see right here, 130,000 for a concourse, and then even the fair conditions at just south of 20,000 or 28,000 rather. So there's definitely a wide range here. Of course, about $100,000 swing, and we'll talk about a little bit more with this car now. Of course, the serial numbers listed, I got to give kudos to Bring a Trailer. They do a great job of acquiring the correct information that's really needed to make a purchase online. I'm calling this a mostly survivor. It's kind of an odd way to put it, because I think with it being put in storage for 4+ decades, it certainly kind of has that original look and feel. But of course, some of the key things, a lot of things on this car have been done that you have to do to these Lincolns. So it's a mix between a survivor and some things like, obviously, with the paint refresh, kind of negate the survivor status, if you will, to a certain extent. But one of the key things here is there's tons of receipts that show the parts and the labor. Now, I did check the Lincoln registry. Of course, this was listed back in 2019. We can see that it was listed here, and shout out to the gentleman that runs that. I believe I've updated everything here. So we basically have a VIN that is the VIN listed here at the top. So the 1 represents the year. So it's, of course, a 61, which we've established. All of these cars were built next to the sister car, the Thunderbird in Wixom, Michigan. 86 in the VIN indicates it's a four-door convertible. The H is pretty standard. That's the 430. The last 6 to 11 digits, basically, as I've indicated prior, that there's always a 4 here. So you want to look at, in this case, the last 5 digits. So it's 12,903. So it's the 12,903rd in the consecutive unit number. And that is out of, if we look down here, 25,164 total production for that year. Of course, that does include the sedan, or excuse me, the hard tops. There were 4 produced, a very low number, kind of a pre-production, early production, if you will. But essentially, you've got 22,000 sedans and 2,857 convertibles for the 61 model year. Okay, another thing that Bring a Trailer does great is they get this photo with a VIN. Many of these listings on eBay, I never see this. So it's good that we can break this down. Of course, Bring a Trailer already does this, but why not? Let's take kind of a deeper look here, and we'll talk about the DSO. So 74A, which you can see over here, represents the body. It is a four-door convertible. M is the Sultana White, I believe is how you pronounce it. I think I said Sultan one time. Trim 96 is white and black. The date is 21B. We'll look at that in a moment. My friend Chris Dunn at Lincoln Land and Tony Boss Bolin have continued to remind me that the DSO, the Destination Sales Office, is not listed on the plate, which you see here, 461. And I actually started to dive into the authenticity manual, which I do have here, but it's a refresher for those that do not know. So we do not know where the original destination of this car was. The axle and the trans are pretty much standard, and that's what you're always going to see. 21B for the date. So if we look at my little chart here, we know this car was produced on B, would equal February, the second month in the year. And it was, of course, in 1961, because the production would have began in 1960. So we can basically say that it came off the assembly line on February 21st. So 2/21/61, kind of a cool date there. It was the 12,903rd, as we mentioned, out of 25,164 for that model year. So give or take, about almost a halfway slice through that production. Now, I don't have the production run dates for 61. If anyone does, please let me know. But kind of looking at other years, I mean, probably being that it was a new model, July, a lot of these began in August of the prior year, but I would say kind of July, August to, July of the next year. So the pros of this listing, what we'll go ahead and do is we'll look back at some of these photos. I'm going to tell you, this car is probably going to appeal to a lot of people. I wouldn't be surprised if this car sells for a real nice dollar because 61 is so desirable. It has a very classy look and color, and that's what we can kind of see here. We do have the wider white wall, which is standard in 61. Oftentimes when you see a white wall of this size post 61, a lot of people aren't fans, but certainly on 60, it definitely looks fantastic. We can see with these front three-quarter shots, we see the top up, the windows are down. To me, I love the top color. Of course, that wouldn't have been standard based upon what I've researched in that year. So, someone may decide that they want to change a couple of these things, including the carpet color or maybe to black. But at the end of the day, to me, it looks really classy. And if you know me, I love blue. So I certainly totally dig it. What we can also see here in 61, I've talked about this in my other videos that delve into the exterior aesthetics of these Lincolns. I'm up to like 62 or 63 now. But in 61, we know that the wheel cover, also known as the hubcap, has the Lincoln star. We also know that the tail, if you will, is longer on the L for the rear quarter panel badging, if you will. Of course, we've got the antenna in the rear. Just a very classy car. If I recall correctly from the Bring a Trailer listing, it is in Wisconsin, which ties into the plate. I'm a huge fan of the grid patterns on the rear of these 61s. Of course, I talked about that in the aesthetic video for 61, and those kind of smaller squares, if you will, really mimic the front grille on these 61 Lincolns. Now, another thing that I think is pretty neat, this isn't going to appeal to everyone, but it does have some underglow lighting on it. What is that? It's basically in 2024, you can buy some fairly inexpensive LED type lights, and you could run those that are, typically wired into a battery source on the car, and you could turn them on or off with a remote. This may or may not be your thing. It's kind of cool for car shows and whatnot. But you can always take that off if that's just something that does not interest you. We could see here in the interior, in 61, I do not believe there was an option for the automatic vent windows. I think that comes either in late 61 or 60 at some point in 62, but you will not see that in 61. We could see I'm always a fan, even though I kind of like the wood option in these years. I also like this color here, kind of that silver-ish. And I do like the authenticity of the seats, with the cracks, and, it's not perfect, but certainly this car is going to be one that I think someone may pick up and decide, hey, I really want to dial this thing in. We can see there is a crack here in the pod for the driver door. That's stuff that can be fixed if you so desire. We can see also in 61 it has the keyhole cover. This was 61 only, and then of course a few 62s, the early production, if you will. It also has the dealer add-on, which was a Ford product, these door moldings, and that allowed for, like, if you open the door and it hit the car next to you, it would kind of help save some dings, hopefully. We can see here the underglow lighting, again, just kind of LEDs, very basic modification, so to speak, but you can kind of see there where that's at. Again, there's a good amount of photos, which I want to give kudos to the seller and Bring a Trailer for what they've done here. They've really showcased a lot of it. In 63, I believe, is when they went to the amber turn signals in the front. So I did notice this. We'll see this in the video. These are typically clear. It is hard to tell. I want to say it's an amber cover, but maybe it's just a light color, but that's just something that's very, very minor. And it's more of a kind of a fun fact that these were clear up until 63 when they changed, I believe, in the 63 model year to the amber covers. You can see here again the longer L. I talked about that a little bit in the 62 and 61 aesthetic video. And that was, of course, changed. And those are kind of getting harder to find with the longer L. We can get a good image here of the carpet kit. They did mention that it was changed under the ownership, and I often like to see the nicer carpet if possible. This carpet is a nice kit. I don't know if it's a Jim Wallace kit from Florida, but certainly I'm a blue fan, and I think it does work even with this black interior. Now, some folks may say, hey, I want to change it, get some black interior or black top, but certainly I think if you put the top down and you're cruising this car, no one's going to really kind of notice. You can see here the contrast between the door panel, which is original, that black color along with the dash. Why they maybe went with blue, maybe it was just a decision that they made, but certainly that's kind of minor, in my opinion. I've talked about this before. The VIN plate or the door plate rather, is in a different spot in 61, and you can kind of see right here, your foot would rest here, your left foot, if you will, and this is in the front of the door jamb. Okay, let's kind of start wrapping this up. We'll take a look at a few more things here. Typical, interior in terms of, the originality of it. Something that I do like that is you will find that it's somewhat rare these days. And let me see if I can find a good image of it. You see these little things right here where they say, like blower control or air system and lighter on the left side. Those are also there, and these tend to get lost and broken and misplaced over the course of time. But the one that says ignition, certainly that one seems to be lost the most, and I think I have an image right here. You can see one right here, I believe, is missing, but the ignition is there. Tony and I kind of call those unicorn aisle parts because They're getting harder to find, and certainly it's a nice little thing to have. Now, I often will talk about underneath these cars, we do not know where the destination sales office was on this one, but I can tell you um, that to me, it looks pretty solid underneath. We can see the exhaust has been redone at some point. You've got your typical kind of undercoating, depending on where this car spent most of its existence. Certainly, that if it was kind of up north where it's at now, they did a lot more undercoating and things like that. But to me, a lot of good photos. Putting this thing up on a lift, showcasing. Now, granted, someone probably came in here at some point and maybe scraped this and painted some and whatnot, but you're getting that look that you really want to see. Certainly, I would still recommend looking at this car in person, but I think what I can tell here, and I like to look up here on some of the subframe parts, um, that it just looks better than a lot that we see. We can also see there is through some of the receipts. I think the regulator was rebuilt, and I say that because please keep in mind that the alternator did not come in on these cars until 63, if I remember correctly. So that was also done. There's a ton of receipts, so those are some things that you'll want to look at. If we scroll back up here to some of the videos, what I want to do is just show you a couple things here that are going to be key call outs. Number one, I always talk about do not leave these cars idling. Unfortunately, they do in this video. The key thing is Fords, as well as some of these Lincolns, all the 60s Lincolns, they can kind of fall into reverse if the steering column is not rebuilt. And if it drops from park to reverse, the car is going to take off. So he does showcase that you can kind of start it, easy. And he puts the turn signal on there. You can kind of see. Sorry about that. You can see the amber color right here. And again, that's not a deal breaker. That's very minor. That's more of kind of a fun fact. It looks like those are amber, and I believe that those were changed in 63. But we can see this little walk around now. The volume is not up, but he does leave the car running, so that's just one key call out there. I won't put you through the top lowering and the auto drops. However, all of that seems to work fine. The auto drop, they only show it on the passenger side. You would want to make sure on the driver's side that it is working as well, because those are totally separate, if you will. If we pop back over here and we look at the pros of the listing, to me, it is a very nice car from what we can see. The top windows work, including the auto drops. From what we can tell, we would assume that the auto drop on the driver's side works as well for the rear. There's many things done to this car, which makes it a solid buy for many. I didn't spend a lot of time going over the receipts, but a lot of stuff was done on it. I think the description even talks about the timing gear and things like that. That stuff really adds up. So if you buy a car for cheaper that doesn't have all of that stuff done, you're going to spend a lot of time and money researching, finding someone that's willing to work on these Lincolns. Okay. 61 is one of the most desirable to many. People just love the front ends. A fun fact, it's the second lowest convertible production from 61 to 67. So 2,857. 67, the last year, comes in at 2,276. So it's kind of a rare breed, if that makes sense. The key call outs, which again, these are not deal breakers whatsoever. There is blue carpet. I think the top is blue as well. That may be a turnoff for some, but certainly not a deal breaker. It kind of reminds me of the Kennedy blue, and I feel it's very classy. It's a non-AC car that could be good or it could be bad. A lot of times you don't even end up using the AC on these things, okay? Sure, if you live in a hot climate and you're sweltering and the top is up, you throw the AC on. Maybe you have it on when the top is down. But certainly, depending on, again, where you live, the benefit to a non-AC car is you don't have those extra components to have to fix or upgrade. The car pros, in my opinion, far outweigh any call-outs. And again, those are very minor. Kind of in my role, I try to be as picky as I can, so to speak. What I'm going to do here is stop sharing my screen. What I'd like to do is hear from you guys. What do you think this car will sell for? I do believe this car is easily going to go over 60,000. It's kind of a crapshoot to see where it's going to go, but I think 61, very desirable. The Sultana White, which is a very classy car. color, if you will. There's all of the things that you want to do to these cars. I think even the entire top was upgraded as well, which is key because, as John Cashman has continued to point out in his 40 plus years of working on these cars, primarily the tops and windows, is the earlier year Lincoln, so the ones, twos, and threes, they used to use, believe it or not, a brake fluid in the top system for the hydraulic top. And of course, when you upgrade all of those components, you end up going over with the Type F. Now, there are a few people out there that will still continue to dispute that you use Type F in these systems. However, I go with the Chris Dunns of Lincoln Land, John Cashman, Blair Farmer, guys that have had hands on these cars for 40 plus years. And when you upgrade the top in 61, 2, and 3, and you go with the newer components, you end up with 99% of the time the Type F fluid that really needs to go in the system. So that's another win as well. I think the top works great. The windows appear to work. There's some good videos. There's also great receipts. So kudos to the seller for putting them on a time for the past time and money rather for the past 9 years. I think it will sell for a solid $1, and rightfully so. This does appear to be a very nice car. As always, I have no connection to this seller or bring a trailer. I would also suggest that if you did really have your interest piqued with this car and you're looking to buy it, certainly put a network out there on social media, see if somebody could go look at it if you're not able to make it. I can only give you my feedback based upon what I see. I do not know this car personally, and I haven't seen it in person as far as I know. So stay on the rise, everyone, and thank you so much for the support. If you want to become a member here, I am going to move into other opportunities in the future, providing even more content for the members. You can also leave a thanks, or I believe it's called a super thanks, if you want to leave a small tip here if you so choose. Stay on the rise, everyone. Take care.